Hey, what's up, Glazers? Welcome to the latest episode of Glass GPT. In today's episode, Keith and I, we're going to be discussing the evolution of glass railing systems. And I just want to let you guys know this stuff is not scripted. This is basically off the dome. I usually have a list of about 5 questions I try to ask, and most of the time we don't even get to all of them. So what you're seeing is real. It just happens as it happens. So with that said, let's kick this off, Keith. Why don't you go ahead and explain to me what it was like when you guys first started doing glass railings? Like, were you in sales? Were you in installs? Like, how did that go for you?
Okay, the first time I attempted, and by the way, I love this platform that you initiated and put together. So I'm very grateful that you did this because I haven't met another person who obsesses about social media as much as me. So respect to you. Thank you. I remember the first time that I had an opportunity to look at glass railings, which to me was like climbing Mount Everest because I was installing shower doors, shower doors, shower doors. That's all we did. We didn't do mirror, we didn't do any other glass work, shower doors. Be it as it may, got into this architectural glass where we're doing the railings, wine cellars. But when I realized we need to get into doing glass railings, it was a builder that sent in a set of plans while I was selling at my shower door. And I looked at it like, man, there's a lot of glass work there. Like, I would just kill to be able to do this. But it was so overwhelming to me because the amount of risk and I don't want to drill into the floor wrong. I didn't know anything. I didn't know any of the codes, the heights, how you make the transition up the stairs. Like, it was overwhelming. And I know this happens for a lot of people out there that might be listening to this because I get the calls. I'm sure you do. I get the DMs. Hey, can you give me some pointers? I'm looking at it doing a job like this, or how do you price it? It was overwhelming, but much like everyone else on the internet, I had a mentor, somebody that I respected in the industry, which goes to this old saying, don't take advice from somebody you wouldn't switch places with. I made sure to ask advice from someone that I respected in the glass railing installation and sales arena. And he put a couple nuggets of information on me that really opened my eyes, but also gave me enough confidence to want to try and tackle this. I didn't go after that first job that I was just telling you about I looked at, but there was an easier one where it was a balcony. It was probably 12 feet wall to wall. I mean, knowing what I know now, it was the easiest possible one that I could have got. And of course, we fucked it up. We made mistakes. But just like anything else, we put all this self-imposed anxiety on ourselves when we're trying to kind of break through that glass ceiling. And once you do it, then it's like, this is a piece of cake. I can do this all day long. And, then so goes the learning pattern. But I can specifically remembering the first opportunity that I looked at, I was scared to death. I wasn't afraid of doing the work. I was afraid of failing. I think everybody eventually is afraid of something. The question is, what is it? And in this case, I was afraid of failing. But how about you? What was the first glass railing job that you did?
Well, I have kind of a different perspective because I wasn't in sales when I first started doing glass railings. The guys ahead of me had installed some glass railings before, primarily in base shoe. It was very popular. It was actually only, that was it. It was either post or base shoe, and that was it back then. And so I installed, a lot of glass railings, and one of my mentors, he would sell them all the time. And we started experimenting with like different like hardware types. So I remember when C.R. Lawrence first came out with the taper lock, it was like revolutionary because prior to that, the method was you would like epoxy or concrete the glass directly into the base shoe, which, is good or bad. It's good in the sense that you don't have to get the base shoe perfectly level and you don't have to get the panels perfectly aligned because wherever the glass is going to sit, you just lock it in and that's it. So it's kind of like carefree base shoe installs. But the taper lock was incredibly powerful because it like locks the glass in place. And I learned very quickly that you have to get that base shoe like nearly perfect in order for it to work, especially if you have a glass railing that doesn't have a top cap or clamps to line it all together. And of course, we're always doing like as frameless as possible. So my first experiences were installing standoffs, installing both post and installing base shoe. And the base shoe wasn't too bad because it was a lot like basically installing storefront channel, shower door channel, office channel, essentially exactly the same thing, except for it's just thicker, right? So cutting it was a kind of a pain. But I remember before the portable bandsaw, or even bandsaws in general, like you couldn't bring a big ass bandsaw to the job site, that we would have to cut the flashing with a hacksaw. And so we'd have to get that piece of steel flashing and stick it on a 2x4 and then physically cut the angles or even straight cuts. So you have to cut through the 2x4 and through the flashing. And if you have a commercial job, you're doing this all day long, it gets pretty old. That's
And
where
if
I
you're
get
the helper, if
the
you're the
arm.
helper, you're doing all the cutting for
Oh,
sure.
yeah, and I was a helper, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of my first experiences as an installer, and then eventually when I became in sales and design, it was much easier for me to take on more risks because I lived it as an installer. Which goes to a conversation that we had before. I wasn't afraid of it because I physically myself install it, so I knew essentially how to measure it. I didn't know, but I wasn't afraid of it because of that reason.
I can't believe you just mentioned the wet sets. In all my I've only been doing architectural glass just about 10 years now. The shower doors were our thing, but the architectural glass, and by the way, I do not claim to be I have a lot of learning still to do. A lot. Today, today, I get a phone call from a very good builder of ours that has a glass railing for a client for a house he built 10 years ago. Overlooks the water, and one of the laminate pieces broke. So I went out and looked at it, and I quickly realized it was wet set. I had never, I've heard about it. I've watched videos of people installing, but when I finally got into it, like you said, the taper lock was there. FHC was kind of right behind it. Again, for me in the last 10 years. So I never had to deal with that. I'm thinking, why the hell would anybody want to do that? What a mess. It had to transform the way we installed these things. But so I go out and look at this job. I'm thinking, how the hell am I going to get this out of here? So we're going to cover it with Blue Max or some safety back. Matter of fact, I saw a video that Brandon Nicastro posted, I don't know, maybe a year ago, as a throwback where it showed him putting like safety backing or Blue Max all over the glass. And he broke the second piece, kind of flopped over. They cut that off and then like chiseled it all out. When I was there, the one thing I noticed, the builder's like, hey, listen, this is a big customer for us. They want to build another house. We got to do some of this punch work item out so they can sell the house. This is one of the big things. But he goes, all their families are here and they want to be using that pool. And when you break the glass or do whatever you got to do with that glass, the pool, this is on the second floor. The pool's right underneath it. And in my head, I'm going, holy shit. If one sliver of glass falls off this balcony, which I'm purposely going to be breaking the glass and chipping it away, there's a very good possibility this is going to happen. You're never finding that piece of glass in the pool. And God forbid one of their grandkids that steps on it or gets water in their mouth and a piece of glass in their mouth. This could be a situation. And as I started kind of going over all these other factors that had nothing to do with the actual railing installation itself, but what could happen from the railing installation, I quickly realized like I got to price this appropriately. I got to take all these precautions to make sure that I protect everything around it while we're doing this. But I can only imagine the lack of, like you said, alignment and adjustability when doing these wet sets. Thank God CR Lawrence came out with their system, and then FHC and, all these other companies kind of followed suit by having mechanical fasteners in there. What's your
Yeah, for
favorite railing system to install? I mean, you said CR Lawrence. Is there other ones that you've installed that you like better than others, or
So I'm trying my hardest not to play favorites, because, in our position, like we get hit up all the time by different brands, but this is my show and I can speak my mind. My favorite, unbiased, and this is the truth, my favorite base shoe system is by Q Railing. I like the Q disc. And the reason I like it is because the base shoe itself, it's already finished. So it comes, anodized or brushed or black. So it doesn't require any cladding whatsoever, which is a huge bonus. And secondly, they have the Q disc. So like it allows you to align, it's a mechanical system, but it allows you to control the tilt. And I think they were one of the first ones to have this system. I have a lot of other companies that follow it. I haven't tried anyone else yet, but I really like that system, and it doesn't require like a huge like a ratchet like the taper lock. Yeah, so for that reason, my favorite base shoe is the Q Railing.
I like that. I haven't had the opportunity to install one of those yet. And to your point, anytime I used to always be on edge about mentioning other companies. So like, oh, I don't want to piss this one off, but we use them all. I always tell them, listen, our number one priority is the customer. And every one of these vendors has different value propositions with their product, and they have different price points. So we like to identify what it is our customers looking first, and then we will go shopping. And by the way, maybe it's already spec, so I don't have a choice. So our allegiance or loyalty, if you will, is to our customer. And then the vendor's secondary because their budget and or plans are going to dictate what we put in there. And not every, CRMs might not have, like for instance, that Fallbrook that I installed for these offices, FHC doesn't have that. Q really doesn't have that. So they all have their own little nuances and customer service and capabilities. But ultimately, our allegiance should be to the customers for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely to the customers and it's to ourselves, right? Because we want to pick the hardware that has the most forgivability, if that's even a word, the
Of
most
course.
forgiveness when it comes to ease of use and the tolerances and the install. So
I
I did a job.
definitely I was unaware of not having the cladding. What a huge difference that is. That's a pain in the ass having to do that. Miter it, tape it. That's a nice feature.
So the cladding, like traditionally, like the cladding, it's just a little bit wider than the sidewalls of the base shoe. So typically, like for most systems, forever, the cladding would go on just to cover the base shoe, but then you would still have to put like black caulking and backer rod, or you have to use the vinyl, which both of them don't really look good. So what we ended up doing is we ended up like ordering cladding that's actually wider than the standard so that the cladding nearly touches the glass. So it bypasses the need for vinyl or caulking altogether. So with the Q railing one, we still have to use the vinyl and we were having a hard time making it look good, but we didn't have to deal with cladding at all. So that was like a win. Like, dicking around with the vinyl was still easier than cutting steel cladding and making that look good after the fact. But you do got to be careful because the base shoe is like a finished product. It's kind of heavy. You don't want to scratch it or ding it, but they got some cool stuff like some like little pins that like hold the base shoes together. Yeah, and it just comes finished. It has a nice protective coating on it. And if you use Redline templates, he could actually get that base shoe cut for you in advance, and Q Railing will cut it to size and ship it to you. So you can just put it together like Legos in the field. I did that once and I was like, holy shit, this is like the greatest thing ever. Because not only are we not having to cut the base shoe, it's already cut. We're not having to cut cladding. We're not having to use concrete or epoxy or none of that. Just put it together very carefully, make it look good, and just trust that your measurements and your Q discs are going to be able to help you get aligned. So when it comes to base shoe, I really like Q railing for that reason. That's like a bonus that they'll actually
That's
cut it
a
to size.
huge plug, and Mr. Yawn over there at Q Railing better be ecstatic when he sees this. Tell me about codes. How did you go about learning? Did your lead installers or mentors kind of school you up on the codes that are required for? And I'm sure the codes that you have in your area might differ a little bit than ours, especially when you get to the exterior portion. I think
Yes.
just because of our impact zones.
So I learned the codes. Well, obviously, when I started installing them, whoever was ordering and measuring them at that time, were following codes or mostly just following whatever the contractor was said. But the basic codes were, 36 inches AFF above finished floor or above noses of tread was like the most basic code.
Yep.
You have a handrail or a grab bar on at least one side of the staircase. It has to be continuous if there's no landings, right? That
And
was
that's
another big code.
yeah.
And then we used to use monolithic tempered for everything. And then laminated glass shortly became the code after that. And then there's like the nuanced codes, like in commercial, where like it has to be like 42 inches tall for the cap rail, but then the grab bar still has to be, 36 inches. And then there's like even deeper codes than that, where on any single run pane of glass, it has to be split into 3 panels or more. And then of course there's like the open tread code where you have like the glass on a rake on the treads. Like you can't get, what is it, a 9-inch ball? You can't
4.
fit. Well, a 4-inch is a horizontal and vertical, right?
That's
But
right.
when you
That's right. That's right.
they get a ball that's 9 inches, right? And if that ball can fit between the open treads and the slope of the glass, then that fails. But it's not super obvious because when you stick, when you have like your space like this, it makes a triangle. And when you stick your tape measure in that triangle, you're gonna have more than 9 inches. So it's like, oh fuck, this ain't gonna pass. But really, it's getting a ball. And if the ball doesn't fit in there, so that's not super obvious unless you physically put a ball in there or you have some kind of CAD software. So I
What
want to
is the
move on.
9 inches? Is it simulating like a child's head?
Yeah, so the 4 inches horizontal and vertical measurements are for that purpose. but it's impossible to get that on the open treads. And so they made an exception on the oh, diagonal dimensions, right? As I understood it, right? And so we installed like billions of them like that, so I know that it's legit over here anyway. But I want to kind of go back in time and ask you, how would you guys essentially like the whole process. So let's just start from the beginning. So the sales part, that's easy. We're both salespeople. Anyone who can sell. But like once you have the job, like how did back? I'm not talking about now. I'm talking about in the beginning. Like how would you go about like physically measuring, breaking down, and ordering glass for a glass handrail system?
Okay, well, we wouldn't up until maybe 3 years ago, meeting someone like Rodney or processes like that, we would order enough base shoe or stanchions or standoffs, whatever we were gonna use for the mechanical fastener, and install those. And then we would go out with MDF, which is it's not cheap, but we found and I know there's others, foam and starboard, there's a litany of cardboard, but we were already manufacturing at the time, and our CNC machine had a digitizing capability. It took
Mhm.
forever, but it had that capability. So we would go out and rip 4x8 sheets of MDF, half-inch thick, to simulate the exact glass size and go through that whole install. So it's like we were doing 2 installs. We'd
Mhm.
install the base shoe, we install all the wood, except if they're straight runs, that we would just pull measurements. But, on the rake or anything that had notches in it, we would manufacture the wood templates, and then we'd bring those wood templates back to our factory. We would digitize them, and then we would have, the glass cut that way. And we continued to do that longer than we probably should have because of one customer. The first time I said, "We can measure this without putting up the wood templates," and it fit perfect. The homeowner got there and goes, "Oh my god, that's way too low." Now, our shop drawings showed 36. I held the tape measure up 36. Our proposal said 30. Like, I covered my ass everywhere. But as you know, at the end of the day, if the customer's not happy, ain't happy. And so going through that whole nuance about financing, I said to myself, man, some people actually need to see something versus just hear something. And just holding up a tape measure, if they're not in construction or maybe they just don't have the imagination to kind of envision what that would look like, I said, man, let's do the wood templates. Customer can actually put their little signature on it, approving that it's okay, and then we can go into production.
Yeah. So that was acted like a physical mock-up, which
Yes.
solidified vision.
But that was critical because we never had a problem when we did that. The actual installation of the glass was the easiest part of that because all the risk and tolerances were already taken care of when doing the
Yeah.
wood templates. I will say one thing that made the wood templates a lot faster that I was unaware of until a carpenter buddy of mine saw a video that I was doing. He called me from up north and he goes, "How come you guys aren't using a track saw?" And for anybody out there that's ever cut pieces of plywood, and if you haven't heard of a track saw, I highly encourage you, go to Amazon right now and buy yourself a track saw. Have you used this?
I'm not familiar with the term, but I'm positive I probably used it. I just don't
It's
remember what
a
tool.
it's imagine a 6 or 8 foot level, but much wider. It's got like an 8-inch bed on it, and there's this tacky, sticky material underneath it. You put your 2 marks on the end of the MDF, put this track on it, and the bed of the saw is meant to fit in this track. It just clamps down and you rip it along. You're not having to power grip clamps on the end or put the little suction cups down and go up against it. It was a game changer. It made it cutting plywood almost fun.
No, I get it. That makes perfect sense. But we never made it that far. So when I was installing, that's how we would do it. Like for posts, for example, we would go and install the posts, physically make templates, and then bring them back. But like when I got into it, and it was up to me to basically figure this shit out, I actually learned how to use CAD. Right, I invested in learning how to use CAD, and so my thing was basically doing exactly what Roddy does, but physically taking the measurements and converting that into 3D space. And then I was able to essentially make digital templates inside a digital space, and I would design it all. And like that would be my shop drawing. And it would also be my cut files and my install sheet. like all in one. And I did that for years and years and years and years. I did get it right every single time, but like towards the end, I almost never missed. And so I've been using Rodney for a long while, and that's definitely the way to go. But yeah, so we didn't make templates, a whole lot. We mostly just took our time with the measuring and AutoCAD capabilities, essentially.
Have you done any curved glass staircases?
Shit. There's a bear shit in the woods. So I want to tell you a story about when it was maybe my first or second month or year. I don't know. I was early in my sales, right? And of course, I was like, I was the young kid, a youngest person at the company to start, youngest this, youngest that. So now I was the youngest salesperson. And so, of course, I had a lot like riding on me, and I sold a job. It was a helix spiral staircase, right? And so I worked with the carpenter, and we came up with the plan. Everything was fine. But then, I got the money, which was cool. It's good feeling to get a, 6-figure check or whatever. But so anyway, I went back to go to measure it. Right. And so you got to imagine this is before, digital templating was a helix. It was in a recessed base shoe. So we basically had to run a plumb bob from the upper level all the way down to the bottom as our center point, right? We used that to find our radius. And then what I essentially had to do is figure out the rise and run of every single panel with a 4-foot level and a 6-foot level. So it's like basically manual measurements all the way down. And it's not something that you can necessarily verify because it's radius. So what we ended up doing, oh yeah, I've ordered like tons and tons of radius glass. So for radius, it's like it's not as hard as like people think it is. It's like very basic math, like when you think about it. So for the vast majority of radius class, you have like a chord, which is like the endpoints in a straight line. You have the height, which is the center point to the edge of that. And so using just those two bits of information, you can figure out the radius of any shape if you're looking at it from a plan view, right? So then using that information, whatever the radius is, you can work backwards and you find the arc length, right? So then the arc length is basically what the glass panel would be if it were flat.
Flat out.
So I essentially figured out what each and every panel needs to be if it were flat using those rise and runs. And so anyway, long story short, I was shitting bricks because I didn't know if it was going to fit. And if it didn't fit, I thought I was going to get fired. Probably not, but that's what was going on in my brain. And so we measured it, we ordered it, we had to get shipped. And it just happened to arrive when I was on vacation for a week. And it kind of ruined my vacation because I was so worried that I wasn't going to fit. But at the end of the day, like it fit like a glove, it fit perfect. And that was like before any of this new lasers and new technology came out. So like as technology came out, I feel like I was able to excel at using it because I had a deeper understanding of how it all works, like from the install perspective, all the way to CAD, all the way to basic geometry. And now I just call Rodney, and all that means nothing anymore.
I
But yeah,
can't believe that you dropped a plumb down the center of that helical and we're pulling dimensions and figuring out the string and cord. My first curved glass job was the biggest job at the time that my architectural glass ever sold. It was for a professional baseball player here in Fort Myers. And I wasn't going to do the job. I was scared out of my mind. And of course, thanks to LinkedIn, I had saw a post from a company called Shape out of, I think they're New Zealand, or, they're somewhere down under.
the glass shape.
Yeah. But what the hook on the piece of content that got me to call them was, we'll come do all the measuring and we'll take all the responsibility. And that was my biggest fear at that time. I was like, this is a big job. It's for a big builder, a big client. And I'm like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Like I couldn't imagine trying to measure that like how you were just talking. But when I saw that piece of content, I called them. I had a price. I had everything figured out in about a 2-week period, got the job, which I couldn't believe. And then, of course, the anxiety started just like you were when you're on vacation. That anxiety doesn't disappear until the job's done and everything fits. But they came out and had a person very similar to, now we use Rodney at Redline, but they had that thing back then when I was doing this job. And that changed everything. The digital templating, the digital measuring, it took all the human error out of it. And a lot of those big jobs, I think what a lot of people don't realize is a builder's not going to just hand those to any chuck in a truck, like Greg Stowe would say at Tennessee. They're not giving those to anybody. And if you fuck one of them up, everybody in town's going to know it. And you're probably never going to get another one, especially if it's a big job. This one that we did was almost $500,000. And I can imagine if we butchered this property up, we wouldn't be able to we'd be blacklisted from doing jobs like that in the future. And so the digitizing, I think, is absolutely
Yeah,
necessary.
there's a lot of writing on it. And I remember when Glass Shape first reached out to us like 15 years ago, before Bearing Glass even existed. And like they were, preaching that. And I wanted to give them a chance. But I just couldn't justify it because their glass, shipping from New Zealand was like so expensive. And like what they were offering was a liability in the measuring that's cool, but it just didn't seem worth it when I basically already had it figured out. Cause it's really not that intimidating. Like when you break it down to simple math. So I actually never used them before. I want to, but I can just order my glass from Precision Glass Bending. That's who we use, by the way. They now offer tempered laminated glass, which is the only reason to order from Glass Shape, previously. But yeah, I'm sure they're fine. We just never use them because we just couldn't justify, the costs.
I couldn't believe that they were able to not so much get somebody to digitize because they outsource that third party, someone here in the States, but then to manufacture that glass, because you and I both know what goes into manufacturing, then creating, then shipping it more than halfway across the world, not country, world. What's the likelihood that I'm going to open this and three corners are going to be chipped? It was perfect. Couldn't believe it. I was ecstatic. But I had the same fears that you did. I was concerned about the liability. Like, if the glass comes out, doesn't fit, we'll take all responsibility. I'm like, this is a
Yeah, that's
no-brainer.
awesome. But they definitely charge for it. But if you can build that into your pricing, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Now, as obviously as the free market principles have kicked in and there's other opportunities to have these things templated and digitized here locally, of course, we want to support the people that are here as well.
Yeah. All right. So we were on the phone earlier and you were telling me a situation that you guys had or have are having where, you got guys that, of course, install shower doors for like $200 or $300 because they can order the glass from wherever overseas. And now you got guys basically trying to do the same thing with glass railings. So why don't you go ahead and tell us your perspective on why builders should never go with dirt cheap pricing for glass railings specifically?
I mean, there's a number of issues, but I think one of the biggest ones is it has nothing to do with the glass or the mechanical fittings themselves. But for instance, if you and I were pricing a job to a builder in town that we hadn't done work for before, but it was a million, $2 million home, and you're drilling into all their quartz stair treads and all the way up. Yes. Can you buy the glass cheaper somewhere else? I'm sure. Can you buy the hardware cheaper? Can you get the labor cheaper somewhere else? But what happens if there's a mistake? What happens if somebody drills the wrong holes or drops a tool and destroys the hardwood and now that has to be paid for? When you start shopping on price down at the bottom, you have to be prepared to take on the chin everything that comes along with that. Do they have the proper insurance, the liability? Do they even have the money in the job to service the builder, you, in a level that you expect? Meaning, if they make a mistake on the job, are they going to go into their pocket and pay to fix that? If glass needs to be reordered because it was their own mistake, are they, you know, I guess what I'm saying is when you shop on solely on price, you're gambling. You're gambling on that job getting done to a level that you're expecting on everything going perfect. And I would ask the builder, when was the last time every single trade on a brand new construction house didn't make any mistakes? And I think when you're shopping on price, that's a gamble that you're willing to take. And I think a lot of people, much like me, and I'm sure like you, we all like to learn things the hard way because it just seems too good to be true. That allure of saving money on the front end. What was the saying that you said? I love this. We got to clip the shit out of this.
Okay, so a wise man by the name of David Huey once told me that he would tell customers that wanted to buy cheap shit, he would tell them, it'll cost you less to pay us more, right? Because he's essentially saying that you're going to pay us to come and redo it anyway. you're going to pay for it twice, whether it's us or somebody else. It'll cost you less to pay us more. And back then, it was about frameless shower doors back when those were the hard thing to do. But today, glass railings are the hard thing to do. And shower door installers, storefronts, it's like glass railings are almost like their own in their own, like a craft in their own. And like a lot of glass companies that want to supply like cheap glass railing products, they're going to use like 3/8 tempered. They're going to use like shower door clamps, shower door channel. They're essentially installing shower doors on your staircase, which is definitely not rated to hold a human being. When an actual glass fabricator, an actual experienced glazing person is going to use hardware that has the engineering behind it. Every single piece of hardware that we use has engineering specs behind it. It tells you what fasteners to use, how many of them you use. They have like guidelines. Or if you want to get crazy and design something off the charts, then you get an engineer to approve it, right? I think it's 500 pounds lateral load is what the glass should be rated at. And so an experienced glass railing installer is going to provide that. The unexperienced is going to use the cheapest hardware, least amount of as possible, cheapest glass, but it's not just the cost savings. I feel like the real miss is in the liability. So let's say you go for that cheaper guy. He installs a frameless railing with shower glass and hardware. The homeowner leans on the glass and it blows up. They fall through it and they're dead. What happens then? You go to that contractor who probably left the state. Like everyone points the finger. Like there's a reason why these codes exist and why certain glass types and certain types of hardware are to be used.
Yeah, but I saved $5,000, Brandon. It was worth it.
Or more like $20,000 when you talk about glass railings, but it's not worth that kind of liability.
Absolutely not. I mean, what does it cost to retain an attorney on a matter like that? I can't even imagine. Knock on wood, we've never had it. I hope we never do, but I can't imagine it's cheap. So how do we strengthen a relationship enough for these builders or new customers to feel so comfortable when using us that they're willing to justify? Because I think people, what's the saying? People buy on emotion, but they justify with logic. How do you strengthen that relationship or educate that customer to a point where they're willing to pay more on the face because all they're seeing is two quotes to justify paying more to use you versus
So
XYG?
So there's like a whole process to that. So the vast majority of people who think they want a glass railing, they have no idea what it really costs. So we kind of broke it down to essentially linear footage pricing. You know, $500 per linear foot installed for like just base shoe, basic, most basic everything, and then it goes up in tiers. And so using this kind of estimating system, we could essentially say, all right, send me a picture, send me whatever. So we basically have like the pre-qualifications done, like they know it's going to be expensive, right? So after the pre-qualifications are done, it's simply just a matter of getting myself or one of my associates in front of them. Us, who have installed about 1 billion of these with our own hands and designed about 1 billion of these on our computers over the years. And we could essentially like walk them through like all the nuances, all the hardware types, have example photos on our iPads. Right. So we just make them feel comfortable in using us because of our vast like knowledge base, like the do's and don'ts, what to watch out for. Like this guy's probably going to charge you less because he's going to use an inferior stamp. Like just explain everything to the T, like as crystal clear as possible. Right? That's like the first step. And the second step is, of course, most people, they want to visualize what their glass railing is going to look like. And one of the things that we do that literally nobody else does is we'll actually offer full 3D renderings of their glass on their staircase ahead of time. And if they don't want to commit, like what I usually do is I'll make an offer saying that, like, okay, I can draw this in CAD. You can give you renderings, all your options. You'll see exactly what it looks like from all angles. But I got to charge you because it takes a lot of time. So I was like, I'm going to charge you $500 for the best shop drawings you've ever seen in your life. And then if you decide to go with us, then that'll come off the bill on the back end, right? And that's kind of like a way to protect myself from them just taking my shop drawings and giving it to the next guy. Which if they do, hey, at least I got paid for my time. But that's literally never happened. So yeah, it's just like anything else, like selling a wine cellar, selling a shower door. It's just confidence and experience above being salesy. Like I literally don't care if they buy from us or not. I mean, of course I do, but That's kind of like how I act. I'm not like desperate, you know. I want to help them get what they're after. I'm like, I've considered myself a co-purchaser, not a salesperson. Like whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, I'm going to help you get there using my expertise, right? That's kind of my mindset.
That's smart. I like how you approach that. I like how you approach that. What else is there? You offer low iron, obviously, standard clear. You're doing laminate. What type of laminates are you using? All SGP?
So SGP, if there's no top rail or top cap, obviously, because you don't want the glass to get limp if it breaks often. But for the most part, I'm using EVA interlayer because it's like soft, almost like PVB, but it's rated to work on exteriors. So long as the glass has like top support or there's not in a position where it could fall out of whatever it's in. The EVA is actually a little bit cheaper and a little bit faster. And, and the manufacturer that we order from, Dillmeyer Glass, by the way, they produce excellent laminated glass in our over here. That's what they use. So by default, they convinced me to use it, and it works on exterior glass in Aspen, Colorado. So I know it's not going to delaminate. So I feel pretty confident using primarily EVA interlayers.
That's strong. That's a huge shout out. Okay. Yeah, we use PVB on everything that we're not using SGP for. And anything exterior here in Florida, we're using SGP. Anything without a top cap, we're using SGP. But you're right. My cost of goods sold, it's like double what the PVB is. And we manufacture both of those. Or not, we manufacture with both of those, not manufactured. But yeah, you're right. Certain applications where they want to base you with no top cap, there's only I don't think there's anything else even tested that has the standard that SGP has, correct?
As far as
Where
I know,
yeah,
it's the
I don't
comes to strength and stability, and it's often even spec like in a commercial, specification. Like they everybody knows, and even in the hardware, some of the hardware will actually specify like use this glass with SGP. Like it's all over.
yeah, because
But
that's how it was tested.
yeah, we ran through a dry spell of SGP. It was like a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, where I just could not source laminated glass with SGP because there was a shortage somehow. I don't know why, but like all my manufacturers, nobody had it. So it's at that point in time where I started using EVA, and so now I use primarily EVA, but I still prefer SGP where it's necessary.
Well, if you ever get stuck and there's a shortage out there again, we'll make sure that we get Brace on the Horn, and we will happily ship that out to you.
Well, I know that now, so you'll be hearing from me.
Okay, what else is there? Do you guys have in your you have a showroom, right?
No,
Your office, you're going into a new showroom.
yeah. So we're going to be moving into a new building, and we're going to build out a showroom. But we
Will you
just
have
signed
any
the.
glass railing displays in there? Will you put any are you gonna design it to have any glass railing displays?
Oh yeah, dude. I have designed like 4 or 5 different showrooms in my time in this industry, and yeah, I'm definitely going to do that. Definitely, definitely.
Yeah, we have it here in our sometimes when I'm dealing with someone over the phone or a contractor or a homeowner that's looking to add glass around their pool or on their second balcony, whatever the case may be. I already know and any customer that does this, they're not just gonna call one place because and if they happen to call us first and think our price is high, of course they're gonna call somebody else. But while I'm on the phone, I will always tell them, listen, no matter who you use, in this case, because the size of this job, I would encourage you to go to their showrooms and take a look and see at their offerings and see how they have it displayed, see their tolerance levels. Don't just base it on the price. Go somewhere where you can see their craftsmanship. Now, I love saying that because I know the people that I'm competing with around here don't have showrooms. And I love how we have our glass railings displayed in our showroom. I'm looking them at out in front of me now. Any customer that we've had walk into our showroom, we've ended up doing business with, after qualifying them on the phone and having a little bit back and forth. And I don't necessarily think it's because the the craftsmanship on the railings that are installed here, that's part of it. It's the whole office. It's clean. It's very progressive and modern. Everybody's dressed a certain type of way. We're not dressed like installers. We're dressed like sales professionals. And the showroom looks like a jewelry store. It's not. an old industrial park where we got some glass hanging up against the wall. And it's a different type of glass showroom. And I think it says a lot without saying much. You know what I mean? It just gives them a comfortability feel like, oh, wow, you guys have all this on display here. You must be doing a lot of this. Sounds like you know what the hell you guys are talking about. So it's a big flex for us when a customer comes into the showroom. That's why I advocate it so much.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
just one of those things that helps get over that hurdle of the higher pricing.
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in a nice showroom. We're just not there yet because we have a small shop, barely enough room for all the offices. But yeah, we're definitely going to get a nice showroom. We're going to build out the nice showroom as soon as we can. But we don't get a lot of walk-ins anyway. Custom home builders and designers, and like 90% of them are repeat clients, so they already know what we're about.
Right on. How big of an area do you guys service, like radius wise, mileage?
So we service the entire state of Colorado. And so the way that we price it is it's like multipliers, right? Like the markup. So we have our basic tier one, I guess, which is our city and all the surrounding cities, like within an hour, I guess, or less. It's like all one price. But we do a lot of work in the high country. So in Colorado, we have places like Steamboat, Aspen, Vail, like all these prestigious mountain towns. And so we have a higher multiplier whenever we have to go and install glass in the mountains, but we don't have trouble selling there because it's because the people in those countries, they want better service, and usually local glass companies like in the middle of nowhere, they're not comfortable with installing like prestigious ginormous crazy glass panels. So yeah, we service the entire state of Colorado, and the further away from home base we get, the more we charge, and we have no trouble charging that.
Well, and you shouldn't because it's a job you probably weren't anticipating getting anyway that far away. So, like, it's no love. You definitely don't cut your price on jobs like that. As we're wrapping this up, I completely forgot that you're out in Colorado, and I'd be remiss, not only
Yeah.
for you, but all the haters that you and I have acquired over the last couple of months. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention a big shout out to my New England Patriots. They're heading back to the Super Bowl. Let's
Oh my
go.
God, that's what you were doing.
Just want to add
Yeah.
another ring to the case here in the showroom that's displayed in our showroom.
Do you guys do UV bonding?
We do. We do.
Gotta do a nice UV bonded display case for those, man. With curved glass.
Gonna need a bigger case and a lot of rings over here.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess we can go ahead and land the plane here. Just want to give shout outs to everybody that's been watching the show and providing feedback. We really appreciate it. And the comments and the feedback is what gives us the motivation to keep doing this. We don't do it every single week, but we've been pretty consistent for the past 6 or 7 weeks or so. And
I love it. I love it. I appreciate your friendship and your commitment to continue doing this because a lot of times, up until we started communicating, I felt like I was out on an island, and that's okay. I'm okay working by myself, but it's always fun to have camaraderie and have someone to talk to about your little wins or problems, especially involving social media and content creation. I love how passionate you are and how serious you take it, and I'm grateful for that. I really am. And so I'm looking forward to continuing to grow our fan base here. We got to get some more guests lined up soon. I know you had a couple people that you were talking about. So I'm really having fun. And again, I appreciate it.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, we'll find another topic next time. Otherwise, we'll have a guest. I think I have two or three lined up. I can't drop names yet, but if you're in Glazing, you probably know who they are. All
Yes.
right, guys. Thanks for watching. Peace.